There was about 47 of those, or at least the vast majority of the people came out in opposition of the bill from all corners of the state of South Carolina. And the one person who did testify against the bill was from out of state. And what it goes to show me is that we're trying to make an issue of something that really is not an issue here in the state of South Carolina. And that's what's very troubling and problematic to me. Because what we're saying is someone who, the reason why this is even being proposed is because what you're saying is someone who is transgender is inherently bad. That's the reason why we're having this conversation. Because if we weren't, then if the assumption was that that person is not inherently bad or this condition is not inherently bad, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Representative Gilliard talked about us having a massive shortage of teachers and us spending a lot of time here talking about this particular bill. The reason why we're having this shortage, on top of the fact that we're not paying them enough, is we're asking teachers to do so much more that's not in their job description. Essentially, just based off of my 6 years here in the legislature, we've asked them to be doctors, we've asked them to be psychologists, we've asked them to be bodyguards. We're asking them to do so much but teach the kids, and we don't support them to do that. And so that's the problem that I have, because what we're asking them to do is so much more than what they've been required to do, and it takes time and presses attention away from what's really important about the students. And about the students, in my comments earlier, I kept referencing why there's this need for us to go down this path of trying to out students and have conversations with those in administration about what's happening with a particular student. And Representative Smith down from me talked about how there's so many identifiable factors, indicators where you could tell if something's going on with a student. And he mentioned pronouns. And it's the slippery slope that I'm concerned with. And so because it is so subjective. You've got a teacher, you've got a student who wants to be known by a certain pronoun. Are we literally off of that basis alone going to say this student has a psychological condition, that this student needs to go to the principal, the vice principal, or some counselor, and all of a sudden they need to be having a conversation with their parent because they may want to go by a particular pronoun, not knowing exactly what's going on? There's so much independent of each other of what could be happening that's very harmful, and that's my concern. There's no basis for us to be going into and forcing teachers to make these judgments, because it's going to be so subjective, and there are going to be teachers who target students, and there are going to be teachers who make false assumptions, and that is going to have consequences. Every household isn't the same. Every parent isn't going to be receptive to this information in the way that you all would think. Again, there are parents who probably think like the people who proposed this bill, that it is inherently bad. And that could be deadly in many instances for some of these students. And what are we going to do about that? What resources are we going to do to support the families in those instances? I don't think we're thinking about that. And that is the concern that I have. Like, we're going down this route because we already think this is bad. Then are we going to start outing students who identify as gay and lesbian now? Are we going to say that they need to be going and talking with the student because we think that that's bad? Because based off of the conversation that we've had here in this legislature, are we going to start doing that, or any other condition that a student may have? I'm all for parental involvement. I'm all for parents being able to have a say in what happens with their children's educational future. But putting teachers in a position where they are forced to make decisions on something that they cannot identify, or they're not trained to diagnose, or they're not trained in the proper sense to be able to really assess, is very problematic, and it takes us down the road that could be very consequential to so many of the students. It can rip apart communities, it can rip apart families, and I don't think that that's being contemplated. And I don't know if frankly, the proponents of this bill care. I'm well aware of the national movement. I'm well aware of what's happening in other legislatures across the country, and I recognize that South Carolina is likely to be next in line. But I would be remiss if I didn't stand here today or sit here today and talk about the concerns that I have about this bill and why it is very problematic and why we need to really understand what's happening. I'm trying to get back to get down to the genesis of why we're here, and it's because there's a viewpoint that what's going on with these with people who are transgender, and that it is inherently bad. And I'll end on this note. And there was a conversation we had yesterday, because so much is put into these debates about what God would want, and what is biblical, and what's just. And I'm a man of faith. I've always been. Certainly have not walked perfectly, but certainly by grace, I am here today in mercy. But what I would tell you is, when we have these conversations, there are people who are born with many conditions, ladies and gentlemen. We've got people who are born with more than 10 digits, more than 10 toes. We've got people who are born with multiple body parts, whether that be with male genitalia and female genitalia. We've got people who are born with so many different conditions, and someone called deformities, and basically we're saying there's no way, and we understand that God makes no mistakes, and that people are born the way they're born, and that in this debate that we, that there's no possible way that someone could be born, and have, as they're young, think about that, the fact that they're not born in the right sex, and want to go down the route that they want to potentially change that. That's harmful. If we can acknowledge that God allows people, and people are born with many different conditions, this is a condition we can acknowledge that people have been born with, and we should be doing more to support them. We should be doing more to support their families, not target them, not ostracize them, not make them, and not put them in harm's way. So, with those comments said, I will be voting no against the bill. I understand its ultimate destination, but as I said before, it's important to me to note that for the members of this committee, for those in the audience and those listening, that we're going down the wrong path in South Carolina. We need to be doing more to support teachers and not put them in these impossible situations.